Hey everybody, my name is Jared and I am a Master Mason in the state of Mississippi in the United States of America. And today I'm wearing one of my favorite lapel pins over from Edgar Alejandro at Masonic Revival because of how versatile it is. A square and compass with the letter G with a wreath around it, nice enamel, black and silver. You can wear it anywhere, it just works. So unless maybe you're in the UK or some other jurisdiction that doesn't do the G, but I know if you head over to Masonic Revival, he's got something there that'll suit your jurisdiction just fine. So last time we talked about the staircase lecture in the Fellowcraft degree. We mentioned a winding staircase and we completely skipped over the first flight of stairs. I told you that there were 3 steps and moved on. So now we're at the next flight of stairs relating to the number 5, and it reads: the 5 orders in architecture: the Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, and Composite. Of these 5 orders, the Ionic, Doric, and the Corinthian, as the most ancient, are most esteemed by Masons. The Ionic, from the skill and ingenuity displayed in its construction, is emblematical of the Pillar of Wisdom, which is situated in the east part of the lodge and is represented by the Worshipful Master. The Doric, from the massive strength of its structure, is emblematical of the Pillar of Strength, which is situated in the west part of the lodge and is represented by the Senior Warden. And the Corinthian, from the exuberance of its ornaments, is emblematical of the Pillar of Beauty, which is situated in the south part of the lodge and is represented by the Junior Warden. In here, we kind of skip some words, but we get around to another part that explains why the number 5 is important, and it says the 5 senses of human nature: hearing, seeing, feeling, smelling, and tasting. The first 3 are most revered by Masons. So perhaps the biggest challenge to me in these videos is taking something that I really feel could be entirely broken out into a book and give it to you in a digestible short video. And this is one of those sections where I feel like that is true. I'm going to give you some information here, but I hope you understand as you watch all of these lectures about the actual degree work and even the Q&A videos that all I can do in these YouTube videos is touch on the surface. I hope to give you something that sparks an idea and inspires you to go do some additional research later. But there's no way in a short time for me to give you all of the esoteric meanings that could possibly exist, or all the things that have been postulated and proposed as possible explanations to things all throughout the history of Freemasonry. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about the 5 orders in architecture and the 5 senses of human nature. So clearly we're talking about the number 5. We mentioned before about a flight of winding stairs consisting of 3, 5, and 7 steps. So these are the 5 steps, and that's why we're focusing on the number 5 at this point. When we actually do a Fellowcraft degree in my lodge, or any Fellowcraft degree I happen to be at, and if I'm given an opportunity to speak to the newly made Fellowcraft, the thing I always like to point out is that these things actually exist. A lot of people in the education system we have in the United States today never even hear about orders of architecture. They never hear about any details about the senses of human nature. They know they exist, they were told the classifications, but they don't really delve into it at all. So this is one of those things, and there's other things that are also a part of this lecture that I like to point out to that man and say, look, you remember during this thing we call the staircase lecture, we mentioned to you the orders of architecture. Those are real. Go check them out. Learn what you can about them. So here is something just to get your appetite wet and let you go check it out. So Uh, what we're talking about here, the 5 orders in architecture, are actually broken down further. There's the Greek orders, which are the Doric, the Ionic, and the Corinthian, and the Roman orders, which are the Tuscan and the Composite. So we could say that what we're really specifically talking about here are the Greek orders. And you can delve into these and try to learn more about which one was created first, why are they actually different, why do they have to have different names, because I think too often people look over it in a very basic way, and I'm guilty of that because I'm no architect. I don't know what I'm talking about when I say Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian orders as it relates to architecture. Even to me, we're talking about some kind of a base or not, some kind of a pillar that's generally the same, and some different kind of topper, and it looks different on each one of them. I mean, really, that's what most of us take away from this. They look a little bit different than each other. But why? There is a reason, and to look into them is something you're going to have to do, because I'm not intelligent enough about this to sit here and explain it in a concise way. I just can't, and that's the honest truth I have to tell you here. But I can tell you that these things do exist to a point where not only can you find them on different structures all throughout the world, but you can actually find them all on one structure. And that's something I learned just trying to look up information about this episode. So this is literally called the Tower of the 5 Orders, and I can't even pronounce where it is at, but it's in Oxford University. So I apologize, but I'm not going to even embarrass myself trying to pronounce this, but I have it here on the screen for you to look at. This building was completed in 1619 and includes the Tuscan through Composite orders. So pretty interesting to see it like that, because as I understand it, you generally see one building with one type of a pillar being used, or if there's different pillars, they're used for a specific purpose. They're not just put on display like they are there. So I think that's interesting, and interesting enough to mention to you, and hope that you go learn more about it. But here in Masonry, we do prescribe certain things to the first 3 orders, the Ionic, the Doric, and the Corinthian. And we mention them in that order because we're going to address the Worshipful Master first, then the Senior Warden, and then the Junior Warden, working our way down in leadership in the lodge. So the Ionic, we say, is because of its skill and ingenuity, is why it is attributed to the Master of the Lodge. Presuming that it is the pillar of wisdom, that there is intelligence about that design, and that somebody who can exhibit the sort of wisdom that we would want to lead the lodge. So we attribute the pillar to wisdom, the Ionic pillar. And then we talk about the Doric, and it's funny to me how this is worded in the Preston Webb ritual here. The Doric, from the massive strength of its structure, is emblematical of the pillar of strength. I always thought that was funny, because here in Freemasonry, where we're making all of these symbolical references and kind of tapping at the door of esoteric concepts and ideas, and sort of kind of pointing to lead you to say, hey, there's more there, you should go look at it, but not actually explaining it to you, just outright. Here we just say that it's a massive structure, and because of that it's strong, and because of that we call it the pillar of strength. Now there's more reason behind that. And it's not a part of the written lecture that I can share with you, but it is something that you should look into more to try to understand what that pillar is supposed to represent, and how we apply that in the realm of Freemasonry. Now the Corinthian has all these ornaments about it, and we say that because of its exuberance, it's emblematical of the pillar of beauty, represented in the south part of the lodge by the Junior Warden. So I think that in particular has a lot more play in Freemasonry ritual than the other two do. I think we play on the idea of the pillar of beauty and all the things that kind of get down into the weeds there. I think we play on that the most. So I would encourage you to look into that pillar the most, but not so much that you ignore the rest of them. So the five senses of human nature, specifically here we're going to list them in order as hearing, seeing, feeling, smelling, and tasting. And we're going to say that the first three are most revered by Masons. Now in the ritual, we give a reason. It's not written down, so I can't share that with you. But I think it's important to note here that by saying the first three are most revered, then I think it's obvious to know that the last two don't get mentioned. But smelling and tasting. The guys over on the Masonic Roundtable, specifically Juan Sepulveda, had some interesting thoughts about the sense of smelling. Thoughts that I agree with. You can go look specifically at traditional observance lodges, and I'm sure there's others as well, who still use like a pot of incense, or maybe they just use regular stick incense they bought from the department store. I don't know. But the point is they're using scent as a part of lodge, and that is something I absolutely agree with. And everybody should. I mean, can you argue this point? Have you ever walked out of your front door in the morning and had a certain scent in the air that just instantly took you back to some place, where you just had that memory just jolt you back? I mean, I know I can say yes, not only to family vacations and camping trips and things like that, but there's times where I can walk past some place that just got mulched, and if it's just the right kind of mulch, it makes me think of a place that my mother used to work at this nursery, and it just brings back memories I haven't thought of for decades, and all of a sudden it's just right there in the front of my mind. Smelling is a very important sense, and I think something that we would do well to lean a little more upon. Just imagine if your lodge room had the same pleasant aroma to it every single time you went to a meeting, and then you got called away with work, with a family emergency, or whatever. Maybe your lodge goes dark for 3 or 4 months out of the year, but then that time you go back, and all of a sudden that scent is there. I bet you brethren who are doing their studying around that aroma and then having to do the degree work around that aroma, I bet you we could do some kind of a study and show that the people using the scent of smell to trigger memory are doing better at memory work than the rest of us. So that was a lot more than 2 cents, but you have it. And for tasting, it must be related to the pancake breakfasts. I just have no idea where else that might go. I'm not sure what sense of tasting might help us out with anything else. So, I couldn't come up with something good to offer to you, so I went with pancakes. All right, so that is it for the number 5. Next time we talk, we'll go up the next flight of stairs and talk about the number 7. So I know that the staircase lecture is not a part of some jurisdictions, even here in the United States. I believe we've mentioned before Pennsylvania does not use this lecture, and I'm not sure how many other jurisdictions internationally use it. But for the jurisdictions that do, if there's something that you'd like to share more about this particular section of the lecture, or even if you don't have this lecture but there's something about it that spoke to you and something that you thought about that you want to share with everybody, then do it in the comments below. I respond to comments on this channel like 4 or 5 times a week, and I try to make sure that everybody gets responded to, and I think that's a big part of keeping the discussion going. The video only has so much information, and I can tell from the comments that people go down and start reading those and not just listen to me. So leave a comment and let other people read what your thoughts are, and so we can keep the discussion going. Thank you all so much for taking the time to watch. We'll see you next time. Bye.